Hello and welcome to Top TV. My name is Jordan, and we are discussing Severance Season 2, Episode 4, Woes Hollow. Written by Anna Ouyang Moench, directed by Ben Stiller, and it premiered February 7th, 2025 on Apple TV Plus. And the synopsis reads, the team participates in a group activity. Kind of taking the page from some of these other streamers with these synopses being so short and barely getting into it. There was this episode, right? This is the one that we've heard about, I feel like, ahead of time, that this episode was very different from what we're used to with when it comes to Severance. And when I was doing my catch-up episode on episode 3 that released Thursday, I kind of thought this is going to be the one with the snow and just from like, I think it was like a trailer or something, or a preview of the episode showed that. And I was wondering, how would this happen? Like, why would is it the outies? Is it the innies? And we find out it is the innies. And we were wondering how that would work. But we have another all innies episode here for most of the crew, right? An all innies episode, but they are out on the snowy like forest. So we'll talk about that, of course. We'll also talk about some other things that we will take a look at. How did this work? But this is called the Outdoor Team Building Retreat Occurrence, or ORTBO, as they shorten it. It's a 2-day event, and that Milchick says that they are at Dieter Eagan National Forest. First time I think we're hearing about Dieter, or that we can remember. But supposedly Kier Eagan's twin brother that ended up passing in the forest. And that Kier had, in this video, it says that Kier had authored a 4th appendix to the Lumon Handbook shortly before he died. And they are, they have to go find that volume of the handbook. I'm really interested in the lore of the Kier Eagan, Dieter Eagan stuff here, because this is, I think we have some hints here that, of course, this may not be accurate. I think we all kind of thought that it would not be accurate, right? Like, when you're talking about how they build up Kier into almost this Christ-like or godlike figure that the innies do, and that the whole company does, I guess. They don't have the Bible underneath in the severed floor. They have the handbook, and then the UUR enters the fray and kind of becomes, I like when, I forget who it was, but somebody said it kind of becomes like a secondary religion, another text that people could kind of like fall into, and then that our innies do at MDR. They fall into that religion instead of the Kier one, right? They're like, what is real? What is this? And it helps them get over that edge to do the OTC. Well, when we're talking about 4th appendix of the Lumon Handbook, and that it's just sitting in Scissors Cave in Dieter Eagan National Park, I kind of call BS on that, right? Like, I don't think it's sitting there 24/7. If this is actually a real park, like that's another thing we haven't even talked about yet. If this is a real park that they are at, I don't think this thing is sitting in the Scissors Cave for 24/7. If Milchick's able to wheel out a TV with a VCR there, they would be able to just put the appendix out there for them to find as well. Because imagine that'd be like going to Yellowstone National Park and finding some like Bill Gates fourth appendix or whatever, like of the Microsoft Handbook. Like, it makes no sense other than like the fact that this park is named after Dieter. But again, these are all innies that we're dealing with, and they don't really question it, right? Like there's nothing that tells them they have to question it, I think, really. But there are hints that this is not real, right? Like I think so anyway. I think there's real hints that, of course, the lore of the Eagan family is false, and I think part of that. Let's not beat around the bush. Okay, so we get the big reveal here. This is what I think people really, the critics, enjoyed this episode for. They said huge twist, all that kind of stuff, and it was Helly R is actually Helena, and it's been Helena since season 2, episode 1. That's the twist. Now, some people found that to be very lackluster because they've been on that train since the premiere. But I do think we have to kind of give the critics a little benefit of the doubt here. They got, I think, some of them got 6 episodes up front and some got all 10. And the way that they have to do their job to make sure their reviews are done, right, is they're probably binging it or as in close succession as they can to get the reviews up before the, deadline. So while there's hints to it in the first few episodes, the elevator ding in episode 2, episode 1, of course, Helly's lie, and some of her acting, I do think is more Helena coded, right? The reviewers are probably watching them in quick succession where they are not having the time to really sit with theories. So when they hit this episode, it is, oh my God, it's all there. If you rewatch it, you'll be able to see it even clearer. But with us, we get these episodes once a week, and we really sit with them, especially the people that listen to Severance podcast or are on the Severance subreddit. They're sitting with their theories. They're rewatching the episode multiple times in a week. They are clued in, right, and looking for things like this. While I don't think many critics are looking for what twist is next, right? The way that we are, the way that we're looking and theorizing and all that kind of stuff. So I just know I saw some people upset that this was the big twist. And I'm like, well, it is a twist. Especially because last week I just said on the last episode, I'm feeling like it's maybe more Helly now. And I've been kind of going, I think it was like episode 1, I was like, I think this is Helly. Episode 2, I'm like, I think this is Helena. Episode 3, I'm like, I'm kind of back to Helly. And then we get this week where it's the reveal. And I think that is what works about this twist so well, is if you rewatch it, there's hints to build up to this, but they're also explainable away as Helly. So, when we're talking about the I'm trying to think of the example I had in my mind here. There was something that Helly, like, maybe, okay, let's look at it as episode 1 when she's talking to Mark about the Audi buying the ring and that it's actually his Audi's husband and Audi's wife and all that. To me, this could be read in both ways. We know how Helena feels about innies from her tape to her innie in season 1. Right? You're not a real person type of thing. So in this, you could read it as Helena being like, that's not actually your wife because you're not actually a real person. You're just the innie. But you could also read it as Helly's being like, well, she's into this guy. We know she's into this guy. And maybe a little jealous of Mark finding out that his Audi's wife is Miss Casey when she's been feeling this connection to him. So it works both ways, that when you get to this reveal, it feels real, but also you don't feel like things have been totally, you don't feel played, I would say is the way I would say that. So this was good. This was a good reveal. And then we get the elevator ding, right? Like, so that's the thing. We've been waiting for the elevator ding. That sound is mostly used to signify when somebody is switching from innie and outie, right? We see it in season 1. We hear that sound even when they're not in the elevator when they do the OTC. Specifically, I don't know, I'd have to rewatch, but I know specifically we hear that at the very end when the OTC turns off again, right? It's like what they hear when they fade to black. You're like, okay, it's done. OTC is done. We hear this while she is under the water with her head down and she transforms back to Helly R. She is switching back to Helly R. So if this is really Helly R's first go around since getting tackled, it's only been maybe a week or two. But she is, got a lot to catch up on here. She has a lot to catch up on. Hopefully they're able to fill her in. And imagine that. You're getting tackled after sharing this truth. And the next thing you know, you wake up underwater. Somebody trying to drown your outie. Pretty crazy. I don't know if she would be that upset about that, though, because she's been wanting to kill her outie this whole time so she wouldn't have to go back to work. But now we know, right? And I do think, the Night Gardener lie, right, is something that maybe trips people up with this reveal. We now know they did not have 5 months of time. They had like maybe 2 days, and maybe 1 12-hour period for her to come up with a lie. So I feel a little better about that. And of course, I think it also can read as Helena's lie because of her being a rich member of the Lumon family. She doesn't really know what stuff is going on. So yeah, maybe a boring apartment where she's by herself watching TV is boring for her. But like Dylan is very clued in on that, and he wants to know more because he hasn't really been to an apartment, right? Or watching a nature documentary, stuff like that. So, and the way that could work also for Helly that we were talking about before was that she was ashamed of being an Eagan, and maybe she would have thought that it's boring apartment because she wanted to be able to find somebody to tell the truth to, blah, 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 blah. So again, that just worked both ways, and now we get the reveal. This is Helena. It's been Helena since season 2, episode 1. So I'm really curious to see how next week's episode is going to go when she maybe gets filled in. If they have the chance to fill her in, because Milchick mentions after all that Irv has done this episode that he will be forgotten, right? He will be forgotten. It'll be like he never existed. And I wonder if that's something they can actually do. So we have a list of the protocols, or the functions, I guess, that they see when they go into the security office. So a few of these we have Beehive, branch transfer. I would assume that function would have happened when like Mark W. and them enter Dario and what's her name, Gretchen, all come over to no, it's Gwendolyn, is it? When they all come over to this branch. Clean slate is a function as well that we see. Clean slate. That's one that I think might be used here. We also have Elephant. Elephant's supposed to have a good memory, though, right? We have Freeze Frame. So I guess they can just stop these people in their tracks. That's pretty interesting. And Glasgow are the functions we see when he's searching for the OTC. There might be another. I thought there was one called Goldfish, but I don't see it on this screenshot here. But let's say if there is one like a Goldfish one where they're able to remove the last 48 hours or the last, maybe they're even able just to remove certain information. because clean slate seems that it'd be too clean slate. But I'm thinking maybe that's what's been happening to Miss Casey or people that get sent to the testing floor, and why Irv may even remember the testing floor is, one of the theories I was talking about last time is maybe Irv and Bert worked together in a department, and that's why they had a connection. And then Irv gets moved to MDR when it becomes too much of a problem, and maybe they did clean slate then. Right? Maybe they did clean slate at that point, and that's why he is not the more, because I think he's worked there longer than Mark, but he's not the senior MDR person. Mark is, right? Or is given the senior role after PD goes. So it's either because Irv's been at MDR less than Mark, but has been at the company longer as a severed employee, or he just wasn't ready for that responsibility, which I think is also another possibility. Or maybe even your Audi can say, like, I don't want any sort of promotions. I just want to do my work. I don't know how that would work. Who makes the decision on who's ready to step up if there's a promotion, the Audi or the Innie? But let's say they're able to actually remove memories from your brain, a severed person's brain, of certain people or events. That would be really curious. We haven't seen that before, because I feel like they would have just done that then, right? Couldn't have Milchick have covered up his OTC error, and instead of letting Dylan go down the path of knowing he had a spouse and kids and all that, just remove that bit of information with like the goldfish protocol or some sort of protocol like that? Maybe. That would either be a little bit of a plot hole, or just, Milchick was thinking it would not be a big deal. We also don't know how soon you have to do it after the event either, if that is something that needs to be done. But clean slate, I feel like that's not something that would be used here. Everybody would be clean slated, and we know that Mark needs to be there for Cold Harbor, so I'm not really sure that would be a thing. But Glasgow, this is what we hear in this episode. We hear Milchick ask the person who is at security to revert Helena to Helly R. And he says on the radio, Glasgow block to be removed. Like, remove the Glasgow block. So I don't know why it would be called that. Let's see if we can kind of come up with something to see what that would be. Oh, okay. So this would be interesting then. Okay, so Glasgow block being that you're preventing them from switching into the Innie. There is a Glasgow coma scale, which rates the eyes, verbal, and motor responses of patients that are impaired consciousness or coma. So it could be called that because you are effectively putting your Innie in a coma. They're not coming out when they're supposed to by going to the severed floor or going into any severed area. Instead, it is your Audi. So I can see it being called that. Because I don't think there'd be I'm just trying to think, I don't know if Glasgow, Scotland would have anything to do with this. So I do think it's probably more in relation to the Glasgow coma scale, which is interesting. That's not something I ever really heard of. But that makes much more sense than the city of Scotland. And it kind of fits with the wording of what actually is happening, right? Like, your Innie is not coming out. They are effectively in a coma while the body is still there and still active. It's the Audi. And you're effectively putting them on ice while you are being the place where they're supposed to be. Okay, cool. So I think we've answered that question now. Let's go into some other things that we have theories on, because Helena sleeps with Mark. And while this is happening, I want to point out, Thursday, I put out the episode that I did for episode 3, that I'm listening to the official Severance podcast with Ben Stiller and Adam Scott. And I'm listening to the second episode of this season. And they mentioned the new intro sequence and how there are like clues and references in there. But they specifically call out like what could be going on with baby Kier that we see at the end of the sequence, right? I've also seen now, since this happened, a lot of people are speculating that Helena may be pregnant now that she slept with Mark. We know that Mark and Gemma had tried, right? That's a conversation in season 1. Which, if Helena is pregnant, that would be a baby Eagan. Is the baby Kier just a reference to a baby Eagan that is coming? Who knows? I think that'd be kind of crazy for her to get pregnant off the one time that they had sex, but that happens. That happens in real life. It's just, that'd be kind of crazy. I then saw people think that they're going to try to input Kier's memories into the baby and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if that sounds a little crazy to me. But, you never know with this show. But I would just think that maybe it's just a reference, a symbology reference of this is a baby Eagan, and it's at Mark's feet. Like maybe it is, and it's in the snow, right? We see the snow in the intro sequence. There's some clues here. The snow could also just be a reference to this episode without the baby, but this has maybe some legs, more legs than I thought it was when I was kind of rolling my eyes at people thinking Helena is pregnant. Then you're like, oh no, but there is a baby in the intro. There's snow in the intro and the baby's crawling in the snow. Maybe this is what it means, right? Maybe that's what it means. I don't think that Irv is fully gone. We hear Milchick say that he is fired and will not be getting a going away party. No, none of that type of stuff. But in the trailer, we do see a watermelon in the shape of Irv's head. So could this be a sign that maybe Mark S. or Helena pulls their weight to actually give Irv a going away party, a send-off? But we also need to know what's still going on with Audi Irv, who he was talking to, stuff like that. So I think we still see John Turturro, even if it's not as any Irv, but I do think we'll still get any Irv as well. So when they're having or about to have sex, we also see Mark see Gemma for a split second instead of Helena. Now, is this because of guilt? Because Mark S. now knows that Gemma and Miss Casey is his Audi's wife? Or is this a sign of the continued reintegration? Again, I think this can be both. I think this can be both here. But we saw in season 1 how Petey dealt with reintegration and was seeing, Miss Cobell in the office while also seeing Miss Cobell in Mark's basement. And it would shift between actually seeing her in the house and seeing her in the office. And same thing with when he's seeing Mark while he's doing the Sudoku, right? And I just love Adam Scott's delivery of this line of the Sudoku in season 1. But, we get Petey seeing things that are not there and having this. And this is another sign, I think, of what the intro can be hinting to when we see at the end of the intro, right? When we have him heading towards the testing floor elevator and it flips between Helly and Miss Casey. This is probably a sign of this scene and maybe taken from this scene, but it might also be something that continues to happen when he's interacting with Helly or Gemma going forward, is seeing the other one as he's reintegrating. Reintegration doesn't seem to be a quick flip of the switch, right? That where all of the memories are there and now you are fully reintegrated. Ragabi had talked in the past about having continued treatment for PD and that he had stopped the continued treatment, and that's part of the reason why he died. She now says she is better at reintegration as well, and that it shouldn't happen the way that it happened to PD. So I think what we might be seeing here is continued, on Mark S. perspective here, of reintegration symptoms in both his outie and innie life, until maybe like the finale is him fully reintegrated as we head into season 3, because I think that feels like a real season 3 type of thing. Let's talk about how Irv figures out that this is Helena and not Helly. So they're having a conversation, and he's been kind of suspicious of her since the overtime contingency story that they share in episode 1. Irving asks Helly again when they're at the campfire, right? And she kind of dodges the questions here. Then we have Irving again press her in front of everybody. But she responds with pretty much saying, like, Irving is just bitter because he'll never be able to see Bert again. This causes Irving to storm off. And this is one of the clues for Irving to put together the answer. He is off in the woods. He accidentally extinguishes his torch, falls asleep, and he has this dream of being in the MDR cubicle in the middle of the forest. And we see Bert, and then we also see Woe. Woe was described in the appendix. We saw a picture of her. This looks exactly like her. Then he starts seeing the numbers on the panel, on the screen of his MDR computer, and it contorts, changes into the shape of Helena's face with the letters all spelling out Eagan just over and over and over and over again. So he confronts her again when he comes back. He says he almost froze to death. And says, like, who are you? You got to be powerful enough, right, to be able to send your outie down to the severed floor. So he kind of puts together she's an Eagan because of this. And he starts yelling out for Mr. Milchick and starts drowning Helly into the water and says that he will kill her unless he brings her back, meaning Helly R. And Milchick is just going with it. He's like, what are you talking about? Pretty much like, what is this? Right? And and then she snaps out of it and says, Seth, just do it. Right? And he does. That's when he calls and gets the Glasgow block removed. So this is interesting because as we saw last week when Dylan was meeting with his wife said that mentioned Seth, right? The innies don't know that Mr. Milchick is Seth Milchick. They just think of him as Mr. Milchick. I guess we don't actually know how many of them know that his name is Seth at all. I even outie wise, but Gretchen does. And he says, like, who is Seth? And she's about to answer. Miss Huang stops her. In this, it is now confirmed for Dylan who Seth is. It's Mr. Milchick. If he's picking up on that. Because at this time, he's also screaming they're all freaked out. This is a high-stress situation. We'll see if he even picks up on that. It is at a moment where it's very high stress and you're watching one of your coworkers try to drown your other coworkers. I don't know if you're really paying attention to things like Seth just effing do it or whatever. Like maybe you don't even hear that depending on where they're standing and stuff. So we'll see if he puts that together. Not that it's like a big clue or a big thing anyway, right? Like his wife didn't say Seth did anything untoward, right? It was just like explaining how the innie and outie works, right? She's like, oh, Seth said there would be like something like that. But now he knows who Seth is if he's paying attention. And we have Irving yell out to them, she is an Eagan. And Mark is perplexed by this. And we'll see the fallout for this. Obviously Helly is not the one that actually lied then. So it'll be easier because we were talking about this, I think at episode 1, that if it was Helly and she is lying, this could kind of make them either be understanding about it, like, oh, we found, obviously you found out you're an Eagan, that's tough type of thing, or that they could think maybe they can't trust her. And maybe that's still how they're going to treat her a little bit, but now that Helly is back as herself, maybe then they will be able to trust her. This leads some big wrinkles for Mark. Helly had just kissed him and then goes to the party in the OTC, wakes up drowning. He thinks he's been interacting with Helly this whole time, sharing moments like the one that they did in their tent where they had sex. Does she hold that against him? Does he, how does this work? I mean, it's her body, right? And it kind of comes back to another reason why you could see the pregnancy thing maybe coming back into it is because in season 1, we have that whole discussion on the news that Natalie is talking with the news people, right? And they say that an outie became pregnant from having sex at work as her innie. And it plays with this whole consent question, right? These are one person, but with two different personalities, right? It's one body with two distinct personalities, the innie and the outie. And each one of them sees that body as theirs and can make choices based on that, right? What snacks they get at the thing. What if the innie gets a snack that messes up the outie's stomach, right? We kind of hear that with Irv when he thinks he's getting fired in the second episode. And you have, him trying to play it off with Mr. Milchick of, oh, what did I eat in there, right? But it's kind of played off as a joke with that and all that. But these are real things of when it's the innie, it's their body, their choice. When it's the outie, it's their body, their choice. But also the innies have been told that even when they're inside, it's their outie's choice, right? Helly tries to quit. No, you can't quit. It's my choice. You're just a worker. You just do the work. So that kind of thing is very interesting on where we go with when we get to these type of concerns of, Mark S. consented, Helena consented, Helly didn't consent. If she ends up pregnant, she has to deal with pregnancy symptoms and all that stuff without even making that choice. Right? Those are the type of things that I'm looking at on why this show is so interesting, as well as just it's really something that can only be done in this show. Right? Because it's not like another person living in your head. It's not like, this kind of came up in Wonder Woman 84, right? Wonder Woman ended up wishing for Trevor to come back, and he shows up, and for her, she sees Trevor. Other people see a different guy because it's his body, right? So like, this is Trevor kind of in this guy's body, and she has sex with him. And people kind of were like, oh, that's kind of drawing a line here. That guy didn't consent. Trevor's in his head. That is not consent. This is different because it is the same person with two different personalities, right? It's still Mark S. It's still Mark Scout, but it's Mark S. because he's in his innie right now. And it leads to these type of questions of, who really has the choice in all of this stuff. And now we have Mark S. reintegrating. And we don't know how long that's going to take. I just said maybe that's a season 3 thing. Or maybe, look, it could be next episode. Sometimes this show is on fire when we're talking about pacing. And it is on fire and moving, right? Like those last 3 episodes of season 1, a lot happened. And so far in the first 4 of this season, a lot has happened. And, we're trying to put those pieces together here, that maybe the reintegration is more complete sooner than what I'm thinking, right? Who knows? You can never really predict with the show. I like, you can get some things like I'm sure there's people that saw the Gemma Miss Casey stuff. I'm sure, we had people that picked out Helena posing as Helly R. There is stuff you can absolutely predict with the pieces that are there. But then I never would have thought we'd have a whole episode like this where they're innies outside. And that's the other question before we kind of start wrapping it up in the next couple minutes here. Is this actually outside? Right? Is this actually Dieter Eagan National Park? We don't know. One of the things that really might, I was debating this last episode when I was previewing this one. I was like, are they really outside, or is it like another level? Is this a testing floor? Is this something like that, right? Like we were talking about that. There are a few clues that maybe make me think that this is not outside. One, we don't see any sort of power cord, but there is a TV that plays a VCR on the top of a mountain, on top of a cliff. Plays a DVD or something, right? From Mr. Milchick. Is the cord just buried in the snow? Is it like what, right? Like, how did that happen? Where's the power source coming from? Is it battery operated? Is it generator? What's going on, right? We have what they call the shadow Shadow Mark, Shadow Dylan, Shadow Irving, Shadow Helly. These are played by different people and pointing to certain things. Dylan calls them their twins. My thought, because of the, previously on Severance type of thing, they show the perpetuity wing. And I'm sure part of that was because of how much the Eagans and Kier was a focus in this episode. But they're kind of far away, and the way that they're moving their body and stuff makes me think of like the figures in the perpetuity wing. And we heard from Gwendolyn and Mark W., right, that they've had animatronic ones at their branch. So that is, maybe it's those, right? Maybe they're not actually real people, but they're, animatronic versions of these characters. Which you can kind of get from ORTBO being an anagram for robot, right? So you can kind of get there a few different ways. Then we have, like I said, the weird thing that the 4th appendix is just chilling in Scissor's cave. That seems kind of odd if you're a company and it's his last appendix to the handbook, and you just let it sit in a national park in a cave. That's weird. And I would say the other fact here is that they removed the Glasgow Protocol. It's not that all of these people are in the overtime contingency, but it seems this forest or this national park is a severed area, kind of like the severed floor. But maybe not, right? Because they kind of get turned on and all at different times. So it's kind of interesting because you don't think that they would have to turn off the Glasgow Protocol if this is outside of the area, right? Because you just want to flip on her OTC and she would just be posing as herself here. But who knows? Maybe they were able to flip them on without the overtime contingency, and then it needed the Glasgow block removed. But, so I've seen some theories that they're not actually outside. We didn't see any really wildlife except for the dead animal, right? Yeah, I'm finding it hard to believe that they were really at the national park, but who knows? I think it would be cool if they were not. But those are kind of what I'm thinking about currently here. Okay, so next week we have Trojan's horse, not a Trojan horse, Trojan's horse. And the description says tensions emerge after the team suffers a loss. The loss obviously being Irv, and the tensions probably, can we trust Helly? This is really Helly now. And maybe her filling in some information on what she saw during the OTC. That's where I would kind of think we're going with that. The other clue too that I wanted to mention, another thing that I thought was interesting, that maybe all of this lore with the Eagans is false, is Helena laughs at this when Milchek is giving some of this information, reading some of these chapters from the appendix. We don't even know if this was actually written by Kier. This is the first time we heard the fourth appendix. We know that Natalie was talking with Rickon, so I saw some people think maybe this is Rickon's work here. I doubt that, just because I think they really wanted the UUR with more any words. I don't think they wanted him to like ghostwrite this appendix, but who knows? I could be wrong with that. But Helena laughs, and this is where, again, like midway through this episode, I'm like, this has got to be Helly then, right? Because this is something Helly would laugh at. So it's either Helena actually did her real study and she is laughing at things Helly would laugh at, or this is all BS. This is all made up, and I think that's the way we have to look at it too. I don't know how much she actually knows of like the lore of the Eagans that they share with the severed employees. But this is something that some of these stories that were being told are so ridiculous that you can't help but laugh if you're an Eagan. You're like, this is what we share about our family to these severed employees, because it feels very scripture-esque. It does. It feels very scripture-esque at times, and I'm sure she's kind of like, this sounds ridiculous. We don't know how bought in she is. We think maybe she was before she started posing but we kind of see something definitely change when she sees that she's kissing Mark in the elevator and rewatching that, and it seems like maybe she is longing for some sort of feeling connection that she hasn't had, and she's kind of vibing with that during this. But yeah, she's laughing at this family story that's told about her family, and Milchek's kind of caught off guard, and everybody else starts kind of laughing at it with her, or at least Mark does. And it's either a ruse to try to keep suspicion off of her, or she is really starting to feel like this is ridiculous. This is crazy. And I wonder the next time we're going to see Helena. Right? When's the next time we see her? We don't know. We don't know how they would ever be able to confirm that it is actually Helly again. Right? She wakes back up here, but if we don't pick up right where this is and we end up back at the severed floor, how do we know that is actually Helly and not just Helena posing as Helly again? These are the type of questions we'll be wondering about as we continue to go. But yeah, so next week, episode 5. We're almost halfway through the season already. There's 10 episodes this season. Next week, we will be halfway through. It'll probably be a Sunday or Monday release for me on the podcast front because I will be out of town on the weekend and come back Sunday. I'll, of course, watch it Thursday night, but I'm not sure if I will have time to put this up before I go out of town. But it'll be up before the next episode drops for sure. But thank you all for watching and listening along with us here on Top TV as we continue our Severance coverage. We do have a YouTube channel. I'm starting to put up other content on there as well, like I did a tier list of 2010's television shows. So you can check out my tier list of those TV shows. I'm looking to do more stuff like that, maybe some fun drafts, have some special guests on with special episodes. All that stuff will be coming up more and more as we get closer to the end of Season 2 of Severance. But thank you all at TopTVPod for all of our social media. Thank you for watching and listening along, and we'll catch you next time when we talk Episode 5 of Season 2 of Severance.